We have some absolutely amazing speakers today. When I first started solving crosswords, my main takeaway was crosswords could be so different. I've spent my entire career in crosswords so far trying to change them and the landscape of people who solve and create and edit them. By my interpretation, every speaker today also thought crosswords could be so different, but more importantly, thought crosswords should be different. And they're here to tell you what it means for them. So our first speaker is Gage. Zach is a conceptual artist and game designer. He is an I-Beam alumnus, Apple Design and Game of the Year award winner, and a BAFTA nominee. Zach has exhibited all over the world, including at the Venice I don't know how to pronounce this, Biennial, and the New York MoMA, and had a solo exhibition at Postmasters Gallery. Zach's work has been covered in many online and printed publications, including the New York Times, Art in America, Neural Magazine, Wired, and Edge Magazine. Zach co-founded Puzzmo with Orda Thorax and designed Puzzmo's games with Jack Schlesinger. Here's Zach.
Hello. My kid woke me up at 5, so I have notes. All right, so here's something I learned from making conceptual art and interactive art. When you make an artwork, you would think that the main job you have is to make something great. And that's true, you do have to do that. But actually you have 2 jobs. Besides making something great, you have to make something that people will actually interact with. If you're making a painting, everybody knows how to interact with a painting. They look at it, and they think about it, and sometimes they draw it. But if you're making something new, especially if you're making something interactive, nobody knows what to do with it. And especially nobody knows what to do with it if you put it in a gallery or a museum, where people have been trained to be quiet and look and sometimes draw. And so if you want people to actually do the art thing of your interactive art, you have to do something else, which is you have to make people feel really comfortable going up to your work. You have to get them excited to touch the work. And you need to figure out how, if they do those things, how to immediately train them to become amazing at interacting with the work. Because we don't have next slides here. No, I know. Because essentially, anybody who interacts with an interactive work in a gallery is on a stage, because everybody else in the gallery is being quiet and staying back and not doing anything. And so you have to take people who are essentially trained to do nothing and turn them into performers who are experts and confident and excited to do the work. And if you do that really well, then other people in the gallery go, I really want to be a performer too. And that's kind of the whole thing of making interactive work. If you make a video game, though, most people who make video games don't do this, right? Most people who make video games just make video games that are like the other video games. If you're making a platforming game, you make a game that you would push A to jump, and everybody knows that. You don't have to tell anyone. You make a game where you start on the left side and you go to the right to get to the end of the level. You don't have to tell anybody about that. And that works great if you are making something for the audience that you have. But if you're making something for an audience that you don't have, like I try to do, you can end up in a bunch of really frustrating experiences. So when I first tried to do a crossword, I started with the New York Times app. This is a recreation. I did not get stumped by a mini. I can do a mini. So I was playing a crossword, imagine it's full size, and I got stuck. And I thought, what can I do? And then I noticed, there's a little life preserver up there. I'll click that. And I did, and I got this. What is this? This is crazy. I don't know what any of this stuff means. And I just felt so alienated because I'm not an expert solver. I don't want to use a tool. I don't want to give a palette. I want help. Give me help with this puzzle. And even if I had known what this meant, none of these things were actually what I wanted. Because the New York Times crossword app, and to be fair to the New York Times, every crossword app, is an app for people who want to do crosswords on a computer. It's not an app for people who want to learn how to do crosswords. They don't care about that at all. Nobody frequently cares about that. They act like painters. So this is the experience you have if you're a kid playing Mario or if you don't know anything about games, and this is the experience that I had when I was trying to do the crossword in the New York Times app. All right, so if you want to make a game that's inviting, which I think a great game has to be inviting, because games are really only things if people play them, and the best game can be is the best its players can be. And so you want to make games that are inviting, that teach people to play, that make people excited. And that's what I want to do with my games and with Puzzmo and with everything. I want to make games that say, like, hey, games are fun, you're smart, you can play this game, and we're going to help you get really good at it. So how do we make a more learnable crossword? What are the things that we thought about trying to do? So I'm all lost in my notes. What do we think about for teaching people crosswords? Before I talk about that, because it's actually really simple and it's more about the journey, I want to talk about just learning in general. There are a lot of different kinds of learning, and there's one kind of learning that I think is really fun learning, and that is figuring it out yourself. Figuring it out yourself is kind of the best kind of learning, and it's the kind of learning that's particularly hard. We don't do a good job teaching it in school. Not everybody's good at it. Figuring it out yourself is this really interesting kind of learning. When I was in high school, for example, I tried to learn how to jump on a skateboard by watching the animations in Tony Hawk Pro Skater, which is very hard. This is terrible. This is not at all what it looks like. You don't throw your legs out. You don't magically pop up. And it took me like a month to do this, and it involved a lot of like trying a thing, thinking about how physics would work, getting on a skateboard, going up and down, seeing it not work, rethinking my idea, going out and trying it again. I think I went through like half a dozen iterations of how I thought an ollie worked before I figured out. And to be fair, like we didn't really have YouTube. Like I could have done a better job than this, but not that much better. And this kind of learning, this experience of learning to ollie like this on a skateboard, it was like pretty tough, but it was also really useful as I continued to learn how to skateboard. Because when you learn like this, when you learn by figuring it out, the main thing you do is you learn kind of the landscape of the problem. It's not like you're learning how to multiply and you know how to multiply. You're learning what multiplication means and how it relates to the rest of math, and that helps you going forward. And so for me, I learned all about the physics of a skateboard and what everything really meant. And that kind of learning is really, 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 really important in the context of games. Because when you play a game, you're not solving a problem that exists. You're solving a variety of ever-shifting problems that are being presented to you one after another as you continue to play the game. And that landscape that you're mapping is really all you have. That's what being good at a game is. It's knowing the landscape of the problem. So how do you make a game that helps people learn how to map a landscape? Well, Jack, who Brooke mentioned, and I did that with a game called Good Sudoku, and it is, I think, a reasonable example of how this can work and how I think about teaching. I'm assuming you know how Sudoku works. If you don't, you have to lay the numbers 1 through 9 in every column and row. There has to be exactly one answer, one of each in every column and row for it to be valid. You also have to do that for houses, but if you don't know what a house is, don't worry about it. It really doesn't matter for this talk. If you're trying to learn Sudoku, what usually happens if you're trying to get good is you play a puzzle and you get stuck, and then like you think like, oh, I need to learn some logic idea, some idea of logic that I don't know. And so you like go to Google and you search and you see something that looks like this. And do not try to read this. This is terrible. This is just an example. So this is for something called a naked pair, which is a very basic logical inference in Sudoku. And what this is doing is it's giving you a giant overview of what a naked pair is. It's showing you all of the different ways that something can be a naked pair. There are 3 different kinds of naked pair, and they're circled in these diagrams. And this is like very hard to learn. So you try to read this, and then you go back to your puzzle, and you're like, which one of my situations is this? And do I really understand it? It's like kind of impossible. And what happens is most people don't. Most people don't play Sudoku at a high level. People just do the easy Sudokus. which is a shame because this stuff is not complicated. It just looks complicated. So in Good Sudoku, what we do is we teach you how to figure this out, how to learn these things one at a time in context, in tiny pieces. So if you're stuck in this, and you ask for a hint, we'll show you that the next thing is a naked pair. And then if you're like, oh, I don't know what that is, you can tap it. And then we show you where it is, and we explain it. And so what we're explaining here, and this is very simple, is like these two boxes, one of them has to be 3, and one of them has to be 9. And so that means that nothing else in that row can be 3 or 9, so you can cross out 3 and 9 everywhere else. It's like really simple. That did not need 2 diagrams and 3 circled things and 5 paragraphs. But we're not giving you the full picture of what a naked pair is, and that's really important because when you teach people to figure it out for themselves, what you need to do is you need to give them little tiny pieces of support all over the place that they can use or use only as much as they want. Because what you never want to do is what you would do if you were explaining a board game to the friend. You would start and say, like, this is what it is, and now I'm going to teach you how to get to it. Because the this is what it is part is the best part. That's the, like, eureka moment when you're figuring something out. And you don't want to steal that fun from people. You just want to give them little tiny pieces of help that they can put together on their own. And so that's what we tried to do with crosswords, and crosswords are a particularly funny problem. Instead of having to deal with like a million versions of logical inferences, what you have to deal with is a crossword that's constantly trying to undermine everybody who's playing it. So this is what Brooke tells me is called misdirect. I really don't know very much about crosswords until working with Brooke. So this is one from one of Brooke's puzzles, and you can see it's like 12:24 or 12:31, and it's, an eve, so maybe it's New Year's Eve or whatever, but it's not. It's not that at all, because 9 letters is a lot longer than an eve. And so when you're thinking about how to teach people how to do crosswords, you're really trying to figure out how to provide the kind of information that we were providing in Good Sudoku in a situation that doesn't ruin the experience for pro players, but helps people understand when they're being tricked and what's going on. And so what we did is really dumb and simple. It's so simple. I thought about it literally. It's embarrassing. I thought about this for like 3 years. And then I figured it out, and I was like, I think everybody else is just going to do this already. We just have a hint button, and you push it, and it gives you a hint. That's like the same as the clue, except it's simple. And the most important, so here, math class quantities that can be converted to decimals. Oh, fractions. Oh, it's actually very straightforward. It's not trying to mess with me at all, and I can figure that out. And what's going on here, there's actually one thing here that's more important than every piece of this. I think you could look at this and you could say, oh, what they're doing is they're making it so no one gets stuck. And no one gets stuck is important because you want to get people feeling confident and get them to finish a puzzle. But actually what we're doing here is way more important. What we're doing is we're showing you the hint right under the clue so that when you figure out the hint, you also figure out the clue. And then the next time you encounter a misdirect clue, maybe you go, oh, this is like last time. This is a misdirect. How else can I think about this? And you think about it differently, and then you solve the clue. And that's the magic trick, is like we're trying to teach you how to understand the culture of crosswords, not the like individual hint. And we're doing it the same way we do it in Good Sudoku, in tiny little drops. And you can do it whenever you need it, and it's there, and it'll help you. And you can see the hint button even turn to a reveal. So if you're still stuck, we'll tell you the answer. And we're always providing that support when you need it. We do one other thing, which ended up, I thought it would just be a small thing, and it ended up actually being pretty interesting. Sorry if you're familiar with this. If you do Puzzmo crosswords, you probably do. But you're probably familiar with the space bars that we have in our puzzles. We put them there because a lot of people play puzzles and they don't know that answers can even be multiple words. And there's really nothing that is more gut-wrenching than spending 10 minutes trying to solve an answer and then finding out you didn't know the rules. They could be multiple words. So we put them in to make sure that that would never happen to people. And what ended up happening is they actually provide a really interesting kind of logical moment and a layer to the puzzle that's different. And it doesn't feel like a hint to people, although if you don't like it, you can turn it off. It doesn't feel like a hint. It feels like it's part of the puzzle. It kind of meshes in with the vibe of everything. So for example, here the hint is that was just a joke. 4 letters, that's a tough one. But if you know that the first word is only 1 letter, it's probably I. And then you would go, oh, it's I kid. Oh, great. And then I couldn't remember the ABC programming block that featured Sister Sister, but then with the I in there, I remembered it was TGIF. Similar kind of situation over here, feathered thing, boa, very easy, feather accessory, boa, very easy to get, and then that would help me figure out the O in out, strike, collars, cry, you're out, kind of a very, I would say that for me this is very hard. You're is like not what I would expect, but thanks to that one bar, I was able to figure it out. And so that's it. That's kind of the whole trick. There's not a lot to it. It's very simple. I think we just ended up there kind of because of the path and not really because of the idea. And the cool thing is that it works. We have had so many people come and tell us that they never did a daily crossword before Puzzmo, and now they play every day. Brooke even sourced first-time constructor crossword puzzles from people who'd never been paid for a crossword, and we got over 100 people submitting crosswords. And that some of those people had never played a daily crossword before, and to me that's just totally unbelievable that we would be able to take someone who'd never played a crossword and within the space of a month or two bring them to a spot where not only are they playing every day, but they want to make something. So that's it. Oh, hey.
We'll take a few questions. Does anyone have any questions for Zach?
Okay. So I was wondering, you showed in your Smart Sudoku, you actually also gave some sort of, in your hints, you also introduced them to terms and to like sort of the kinds of things to expect to see. And that was, I didn't see that much in the puzzle. In the Puzzmo, you give the hint, you give an alternate definition for the clue, but you don't necessarily say, oh, that was a misdirect because of eaves or whatever, like what you were explaining to us. And I think maybe that would be helpful. Is that something you've considered putting in?
Yeah, so, Brooke, should I still repeat it even if it's on mic? Okay, cool. Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I think we did that for Sudoku because the names of the techniques were critical for our thinking about how to structure. Like a lot of good Sudoku that I didn't show is like, okay, there are 5 difficulties and which techniques are in those difficulties and how do we break them down and what are you going to see in the future and how do we connect you, when you, on one level you've got like a hidden pair and then later you have a split hidden pair and you need to be able to like conceptualize that. In the crossword, I think that that's less important for learning a crossword. It's a lot more of like a fuzzy zone, but I think you're right. It probably would be great to have that stuff. And I know Brooke has been working on sort of a guide for crosswords that we're thinking about launching at some point, and that would certainly include all of that terminology. I think that is a really good suggestion.
Can I also speak to that?
Yeah, please.
Sometimes things are misdirected to some people and not others, and so you want to be careful with that. There could be certain populations or demographics of people who immediately see something and others that don't, so it's not always 100% for sure a misdirect. And Matthew Stock, who I know many of you know and love, writes the hints for most of our Puzzmo crosswords, and every once in a while he'll put in a little wordplay tip at the end of the hint, where he'll be like, wordplay tip, like here, start meant prefix. So that does come up occasionally. We'll take one more question.
Yes, so in terms of the process of actually constructing a puzzle for Puzzmo's format with the space bars and the hints, I'm wondering what sorts of things are different about the construction process when you know that it's going to be in with these additional features compared to a more traditional puzzle? Like, what are some things to keep in mind when writing clues, for instance?
That is definitely a Brooke question.
Thank you for your question. I would say I don't advise any differences when people send me crosswords specific to Puzzmo. Some people, which you know, you have contributed a crossword that will run at Puzzmo soon, which I'm very excited about. Will ask to write their own hints, which can be really fun. That's definitely a minority. And then some people, where's Ben? Is Ben here? Ben has, you can raise your hand, Ben. Some constructors have started to do really creative things with the Puzzmo infrastructure, which Ben will have a puzzle in June that does something really creative with the Puzzmo infrastructure that wouldn't be possible to do without it. If you solved my April Fool's puzzle, it required the hints, or did it? But yeah, in general, I've more found constructors playing with them creatively as opposed to adapting their puzzle style to them.
I do think the biggest part from my side that feels like a change is that we source notes from the constructors about what the puzzle was and why they built it and sort of what their life is. And I think that has been, there's like a huge variety in those notes, and they're all great and they feel really special. And sometimes you can really feel people trying to sort of go the extra mile and have that be a big part of the puzzle experience too.
Every puzzle in your clipboard has notes, so enjoy them. Let's give it up one more time for Zach.